And then this one's kind of random too, but Nara and I were like thinking of all kinds of questions. Like, are all shapeshifters like dense, or are there some that also are light?
That's a good question too. Okay.
Right.
There's no bad question. But yeah.
Right.
Okay. I think once we get about 5, then we can like start on that. It's plenty. Okay. We were thinking about just different types of double standards when it comes to the female and male expression. I don't know if you guys are interested in that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be.
Specifically in terms of like defining what, like, you know how there's a lot of a common theme like, oh, he's a dangerous man, you know, or usually that's put on men in general.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not really, I used to think if they're a big guy that they're possibly dangerous, but sometimes they're just like a teddy bear inside. So I was like, I'm wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
But Chief corrected me, and he's like, you know, people consciousness in a feminine expression can also be dangerous, especially mentally damaging. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's totally true. I didn't even think about that.
Mm-hmm.
One more topic, and then I think we'll have plenty to talk about.
I think can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I think it would be cool to talk about what you can do to feel safe to be able to express yourself in spaces where maybe other people are sort of pressuring you to do otherwise.
Okay. Like could you give me an example of an arena where you definitely felt that? Were you like in a crowd, or were you at a certain place, or just in general?
Well, sometimes I post things on Facebook and I have one intention to be able to share with a certain group of people, but everybody has access to Facebook, and then they show
Yeah.
up with their thoughts and assumptions of, like a particular post was, filled with lust or something, which I didn't intend. What you took out of it is really not my problem. But
Yeah.
But that was just a particular way I wanted to express myself at the moment, and I felt good about it. And for me to be able to get to the point where I could do that,
right,
was a big deal to me.
Right. Okay.
So now I'm grabbing.
Go ahead. I think it glitched a little.
Yeah.
So now you're the last thing I said. So now you're like grabbing something or something with it.
Well, grappling with making sure that I feel safe enough to be able to express myself as I see fit, without the fear of other people making comments and shifting what it is that how I want to express myself based on the fear of what other people are going to say.
Right. I think Nelly has a great example. I think Shamanelli has a great example of this. She expressed to us a story recently that has exactly what to do with what you were talking about. Well, specifically feeling safe on social media to be able to express your type of views. Would you like to share that story?
Oh yeah. Hi everyone. Last forum I expressed. I'm a tattoo artist, and I tattooed someone's son who's in the industry, and it went viral in like the worst way. And I instantly understood that if I feed it, I'm feeding the consciousness of it, and if I fear it, I'm doing the same. So I just ignored it, and then leaving that alone, coming full circle, they reached out to me last week, and it was one of Shaq's sons that I tattooed, and they reached out to me, and I ended up actually tattooing him on his mother's show, Basketball Wives or something like that. So at the end of the day, if you don't feed the negative energy, it comes back to you in a positive way. But what you're experiencing is fear of consciousness, because I've learned through that experience that when you put things in the internet, it's not like you're posting it for people. You have to understand you're posting it for all types of consciousness to gravitate towards it. So if it's something that you struggled with to even get to a place where you can share openly like you are today, there's no surprise that that's happening to you, because consciously it's something that's trying to keep you in that space of fear. So if you just post it because it's something you want to do, you just release it and let it go, and don't worry about the energies or the consciousness that is going to gravitate towards that. Because if you take on that attention, it's kind of like you're taking it personal.
Thank you, Nelly. That was great. Another thing that will really help, that Chief taught me and has taught you as well, is your containment barrier exercises. So the reason why, a lot of times, the reason why you feel the fear is because there's, for one, not only are you dealing with external density, you're dealing with internal density. So for example, you've had several expressions, you've had this expression, and you've experienced the fear program. And whenever, because of that, we feel susceptible to other people. So even when you have your containment, you have to think about, okay, I need to do some internal containment as well. Because externally, you have people on social media trying to attack you, right? But then internally, you have an attack from the program, from maybe attachments or MCs, things like that, like be afraid, be afraid. So if you do your internal containment barrier and external containment barrier, it will help you keep a peace of mind where it doesn't matter what they think. It just matters your own journey. You're going forward, you're moving forward step by step. And you're just sharing them almost like, you know how you drop a pin on Google? Like when you're sharing a post and you know it is balanced and it's right on, you're just sharing where you are in your journey. And it doesn't matter who looks at your pin or who doesn't, because you're still going to move forward regardless of what they think. You're still going to get to your destination no matter what.
Yeah, I like the analogy. That's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was good.
Thank you. Chief, would you like to join in?
Only if the women, ladies are ready.
Are you ready for Chief? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So are we going to be standing or?
Well, we can sit, but
Okay.
I don't know.
Yes.
Can they see we're got
I can see you perfectly sitting down.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay. Good morning, evening, afternoon, fellow consciousness.
Good morning.
Okay. Yes, I was just eavesdropping, I wanted Ms. A to feel comfortable with reading the forum, so I just stayed out of it. But you guys had some really, really good questions, and I liked some of the antidotes that explained some of the things that were going on. What do we have?
A water guy.
Oh, okay. So anyway, one of the ones, well, I think Ms. A covered it really well about containment, and the fact that, and what Neo Shamanic was saying about just literally putting out what you desire to put out energetically, and not worrying about how someone else feels about it. And usually if someone's going to say something negative, there's something behind that. And they literally are targeting you. And my perception of it is that everything is on a grid. There's a light grid, there's a dense grid. The dense grid has overpowered everything. And so you'll find random people with the same attack. They don't even know each other, but a very similar type of attack. A lot of that has to do with just, I should say, even nationwide or worldwide or cultural-wide programming. That certain individuals have been programmed to approach certain things a certain way, react a certain way to certain things, and you'll find them, if whatever you're saying causes whatever density in them to feel threatened, then they start to react.
Mm.
But one of the things I found, even just from experience with doing what I've been doing here in Chiang Mai, I've been doing the work for decades. but I didn't really come out broadly until a couple of years ago. And there were a number of people who wanted to attack me. They didn't even know me. But the fact that what I was doing was effective, and it was something that came from a place that they couldn't understand, they would start to attack me. I think I'm probably, repeating myself. I probably mentioned this the last time. Well, in other words, I'm a dense entity and all this other kind of rhetoric. But in the end, I realized it was their fear. Mm-hmm. And some people, they were just basically, when you deal with this type of work, and it's hard for me to actually, because the word work kind of makes it feel like an occupation, and I don't really look at it like an occupation. It's just, I feel like it's something that I came to do, and when I was triggered properly, I began to understand exactly what I was doing and what I was supposed to do and how to do it. There are a lot of individuals, like the way that this society is created, there's a lot of lying going on 24/7. Thus the thing, I'll just brush past the corona thing. It's major lying going on. People are afraid, but not looking for the source themselves, not doing the research themselves, but just accepting. Because the program tells you must accept if it comes from this place, that place, or this other place. I've been around long enough. One of the great things about being mature, I've been around long enough and have paid attention in this realm to actually remember all the little lies that have been told over this amount of time that I've been here. And the corona thing is just another lie.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I've seen this stuff before, but I've never seen it promoted the way that it's being promoted now. Mm-hmm. When it's promoted that big, it's a lie. Absolutely. It's a hoax. It's a fake. Just as Neo Shamanic said, if you believe in it, you open yourself up to it. Mm-hmm. But then you were going to say something.
I remember when I went to college, I went to like a geography class, or it was talking about global warming specifically, because, that used to be the trend, the biggest trend. Corona has stomped on global warming. That's secondary now. But before global warming, it used to be global cooling. But they're not scaring enough people with global cooling, so they repackaged their marketing strategy, and it became global warming. And that's what they're doing with Corona. It's like you compared.
Just repackaging fear.
Yeah, fear.
Yeah.
Literally. And they
even for them to call it Corona, it's the flu. And if you think about all the vaccines we've all gotten because we're of age since we were younger, a part of it was the Corona. So now they're like saying that a lot of the tests came out false positives, and I'm like, you guys don't see how stupid this is? Like, duh, we're gonna test false positive because we have a strain of the Corona in us because we got vaccinated when we were younger because we didn't know any better. Right. So it's like, if you follow the hype, it's a lie.
Yes, weak lies. They come up with a weak excuse for everything that falls on its face. They did start shifting from global cooling because Gaia was doing her own thing. Then things got hot. Oh, well, it's global warming. Then all of a sudden, some things got cool. Oh, it's global cooling. Really.
And you compared the fatality rate of fatalities caused by vehicle accidents, fatalities caused by, fatalities in hospitals. And if you compare those numbers, they're a huge epidemic compared to Corona.
Yeah, compared to Corona.
Yes.
Even the number of people committing suicide.
Yeah, it's larger.
Yeah. What it is, it's an illogical mindset that's been programmed in individuals. I had a friend who was just a hypochondriac, and every conversation was, be afraid of this chemical, be afraid of that, be afraid of plastic, be afraid of, this, be afraid of walking outside your house. And I just, at a point, I had enough. I said, how can you live if you're so afraid of dying?
Yeah.
How can you have a decent experience, living if you're so afraid of dying? What's the point? One of my great uncles told me once, he said, I'll be here as long as I have a good quality of life. You didn't have any qualms about, transitioning out of this. But that side of my family, they came from, the nation's people mixed with, the African and the shaman stuff. So they talked about quality of life.
Yeah.
When my grandmother passed, she passed at 99. And, she wasn't an alcoholic or anything, but she had a whole lot of stuff that I would think would kill her by the age of She lived to 99, and she had tenacity. She was like a tough cookie. It was how her mind kept her moving. And when someone decided that because she was suffering from a little bit of dementia, which was less than my mother who passed last year, less dementia, some issues with her eyesight, she was making her own way. She had this really stylish apartment and everything she was living in. She was in her 90s. And one of my relatives decided to be lazy about things and went against my grandma's wishes to be put in, she said, don't ever put me in an old folks home. They said, oh, she's going to be a problem. We have to go and check on her and all this, whatever. She would prefer to just ride out her time in her own space and transition. They put her in an old folks home. She said, I told you I didn't want this. You know what she did? She stopped eating. Within a week, she was gone. She made the decision to transition. She wasn't afraid of it. You got all these people buying out toilet tissue and water and all this kind of nonsense.
Oh my goodness. That is, and it's worse in America. In the States, it's beyond illogical. Like it makes no sense how people are behaving out here.
Yeah, if they looked at themselves, right? If they looked at themselves, is there anything logical about your behavior?
Nope.
But because so-and-so is doing it this way, and that person, I remember when I was a kid, I had very logical thoughts. And then I decided maybe my logical thoughts were crazy because all the other people were behaving crazy. So maybe I should be crazy like them. I wasn't thinking that. I just felt maybe I'm wrong, maybe they're right. And then I'd start trying to behave like them. And I had a reaction. And I couldn't do it. So, I ended up being pretty much like a renegade or like a freak show, I guess, to them because of the way I thought. But it's great to be a renegade.
Yeah.
That makes a perfect, really segue to another topic that we already talked about on this list. And I remember you said that it can kill you, your mentality can kill you faster than any kind of physical ailment or physical issue that you have.
Yeah.
And I remember we were talking about how there's usually a stereotype about dangerous men, but also you said that people or consciousness in a feminine expression can also be dangerous, especially mentally. And remember we watched a comedian who his mother was his mother pretty much just terrorized a terror in his life. And he talked about, it was like his whole comedic show was about his mother tearing him down as a child. Like she would berate him about a very small issue over and over until he was literally choking on his snot. And like he was joking about it, but that's literally how she damaged him constantly. Any kind of mistake he made, small, big, whatever, she would also put it on blast in front of the public people, strangers, anything. And he literally began to repeat the cycle. He would do that to his own son. Put on blast the size of his penis, put on blast any kind of mistake he had in front of crowds of hundreds or thousands of people. And I'm like, wow, it's like, and you talked about instead of feminine or masculine, you said dangerous consciousness.
Yeah, dangerous consciousness. In the end, we're consciousness first. And we're expressing ourselves either as feminine or masculine. And what comes with that, there are programs that are literally seem like, your computer programs walking around and having a program, basically, what do you call it? Just, I guess it's programmed into your energy, programmed into your consciousness. And then you have the support system that literally will tell women that you should behave this way and you should behave that way. Or you said something about the women when you were coming up were telling you that you needed to multitask. Women need to multitask because men can't multitask. So it means you had to run and, you know, do 10 things at the same time. And if you can't do 10 things at the same time, you're failing as a woman, you know?
I was like, that sucks.
Yeah. You know, and I know for a fact it's BS about men not being able to multitask. I multitask really well. But it's just programming, you know? It's just these ideas. One of the things that's kind of funny, when you start to realize it feels like you're living in a world of zombies after a while after you do this work. Because you'll start to speak something, you know, say something very logical. And the person will sit across from you, and all of a sudden their head kind of goes tilted like that, and their eyes go blank.
Mm-hmm.
And you're being taught that everyone's the same. Every human has the possibility to say, no, they're not.
Everyone has free
will. That's a bunch of nonsense. You can create your own free will if you understand what the programs are, and you start to break away from the programs.
And some people are so zombified, they can't even fathom what free will, nor do they desire. They're just so...
You're like, what do you mean? We have to think for ourselves now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I ran into that like in my 20s and 30s.
I had an issue with my mother probably a month ago, where she was so frantic because my father's on chemo, and I guess they had to update his insurance for the Medicaid and all that stuff. And it's the same company because they get food stamps. So she was like, what if they take away our food stamps? I'm like, how does that have anything to do with the issue at hand? And she's like, well, they sent the paper that they need this, and it's the same building. I'm like, but how would those wires cross if you're reapplying for one thing? It's a department in the same building, but I'm like, you're afraid of it. She's like, I'm not afraid of it. Can you check on the computer? I'm like, everything's gonna be fine. And she's like, can you check on the computer? I was like, I checked within my own computer. I'm good. I don't have to go to another consciousness to get the answers that I'm telling you. Like, I'm good. And it's just like, I saw how a piece of paper that she got in the mail instilled so much fear in her. And I was like, it's a piece of paper. Make it make sense.
Yeah, because she's been programmed to fear.
Mm-hmm.
Been programmed to fear.
And it's like all those things tied in together.
Yeah.
And I feel like too, a lot of women too, when they fear things that they can't necessarily put a face to, I feel like they fear like they would a male conscious, like that the issue is bigger than them and like more like aggressive and can overpower them. And it's like, no, it's not. It's what you're creating, like the big boogeyman that a lot of women create in their minds. I see it through my mom, and I'm like, why are you talking like this is something that you can't like overcome or get away from or even see past it? And it's like, I feel like consciously they create that same type of energy that we project onto, like how you said, Ms. Alethi, about the dangerous man. Like, I feel like that's what a lot of times consciously women see issues as when they have to go through things.
I think you're so right. I actually had that experience myself. Being with Chief, I feel really happy to learn, and my life is really changing. And I have a relative that will try to come by and stalk the house and stalk me. And there was a few times back that when she would come, it was almost like you said, this fear that was bigger than me, as if she could literally take me away, like take me back to the cult that we used to be. And I was like, man, this fear is totally illogical. I need to get it
right.
But I literally I had sessions, and I also contained that feeling of fear, and I just kept doing it over and over, because sometimes in containment barrier exercises, people will do it once and be like, it's not working. Do it again. Definitely had to do it again.
Well, in the beginnings of certain individuals, I think most of you probably have heard, we kind of had to change the name of it because people need names, and I understand that, and they also need visuals. So when I think I might have mentioned this last time too, I would talk about, an iron ball, something in their mind that would make them feel like, okay, this is hard. It's going to be hard for anything to get through. And I said, and also your mind is very key, because you're creating it with your mind. The mind is very, very powerful. And this realm, they spend a lot of time trying to tell you that your mind is not strong. That you have no control over anything. If you're, just losing your balance and you're acting a certain way, there's nothing you can do, go to this psychiatrist or somebody like that. They'll sit there and they'll talk around your issue, or then they say, how do you feel about that? You know, instead of really delving into what the issue is. And they don't know what the issue is themselves. Most psychiatrists I've ever met need psychiatrists.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. So literally, again, going back to your mom and going to everyone, I had to fight through fear myself to get to the point where I'm at right now. And fear, it will manifest itself as a consciousness that will show up, or you'll look at something and you can start to feel it happening if you're being aware. You say, why am I feeling this way? Because my logical higher consciousness is like, this is ridiculous. Why should you be afraid of, people just afraid of caterpillars or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I had a woman who worked for me who was afraid of caterpillars.
I knew a lady who was afraid of cows.
Yeah, afraid of cows.
Like, we're driving on the road, right? And she's like, there's a cow. Okay, there's a fence in between me and the road. And I'm like, and this cow. And I'm like, how is the cow going to get you? It would have to jump the fence.
Yes.
And get you. She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's not logical, but I'm afraid this is the way it is. This is the way it's always going to be. Growing up on farms and things, yeah, you got to be careful around bulls,
Right.
So, you don't want to go in a pen with a bull because he's territorial. But cow? We were like 3-year-olds petting cows when I was a kid. But all this illogical, it had all these illogical ways of thinking are part of program, and part of it is to feed something on the other side. Inevitably, it has to go to the other side. I had the hardest time getting there through discussion when I was younger because no one wanted to think, we were told that that's a bunch of hooey superstition or whatever, and so on and so forth. And anything that they come down on in this world, in the system, come down on that hard, you got to really believe there's something to it.
I recently, the containment exercises that you guys have taught me have helped. I'll say for like over a year now. And recently it was when I had to kind of check myself again with this whole Corona thing. Because I'm like, why am I feeling unprepared? But I know I'm prepared. And I just realized it was just everybody talking about it. Every which way I turned, it was in my face. And I was like, okay. And I had to come home and just gather myself and say, all right, I feel like how you said, Mr. Harry, how you feel it. And I felt it like infecting me. And I was like, get off of me. I was like, no, I understand what it is. Rebalance myself. I'm good. And I started my containment again. And it was just like, okay, now I realize I have to do it more than what I have been used to because it's so intense now.
Yeah. Well, here's something that was really interesting that, it has to do with a little bit of the Corona thing, but it has to do with what's going on in the realm that they are not talking about. So I think I sent a number of photos around, certain ones of you that my younger sister had taken in the night sky out on the land where the first temple is being built. And she's always been extremely psychic ever since she was really little, and things will talk to her. I had to help her because she was listening to anything. There's a lot of stuff on the other side that will talk all kinds of nonsense, and literally will have you thinking you're crazy just by listening to them. So she went out and she took these pictures, and a number of you have seen them, and they're pretty wild looking.
Yeah.
And my older sister, they're living together right now. She sees these other things, but also my younger sister sees these particular things also. And there are these interesting looking orbs, huge orbs that are on the horizon in Nevada. And my older sister, she likes to see if anyone sees, because we've had experience with seeing, extraterrestrial craft since we were in our teens. So she was, looking online to see who might have seen what she's looking at, what she's been seeing. And she's been seeing them for well over 3 months. And one shows up in one area, and then there's two. And then, she had her star app for constellations or whatever, just to make sure that she wasn't looking at a planet or a star or something like that. Also, also, this thing didn't move with the rotation of the planet, which, as you know, if you watch the night sky, stars, because of the rotation of the planet, it looks like, the heavens are moving. So finally, a month later, someone was looking, noticing this thing, that he looked through some high-powered binoculars, and he described, what it was, and he talked about the location. He was in the same town that she's in, and it was the exact location that she saw the one. But he didn't see, there's about 5 of them in different areas. Fighter jets were flying through during this time. Helicopters at a high altitude flying through. One day, she said a jet was coming through so low that she thought it was going to land in their area.
Oh, wow.
As it got to the mountains, it veered up really sharp and went up because they're trying to figure out what the hell was going on over there. So now there's another guy who posted, and he's seeing, I think, probably as many as she's seeing, and this was last week. And he said he saw them in California when he lived in California. Then he moved out to Nevada. And he says, I saw some of this stuff in California that's going on now. He said, what's going on in Nevada, where he's at now, he said, it's a lot more than what he was seeing in California. And he thought it was pretty wild what he was seeing in California. So it's like one guy described it as a huge orb that had lights around it. And it's like energy moving inside of the orb. Like he said, kind of like an amoeba moving around, black and white and so on and so forth. And at one point, it changed its shape to flat and then turned back into an orb again. So now my sister, she's in the market for a telescope because she couldn't see it through, the details, those details through her binoculars. She says, these must be Kmart binoculars. I'm going to buy a telescope so I can get a closer look. But
what's your take on that?
What's my take on that? I know exactly what's going on, and I'm not going to share everything that I know is going on. All this stuff for the last 10 years, what was going to happen. But there's a certain shift that's going on. And I was warned that it was going to happen, and it's going on right now. You think Corona is just some happenstance thing, and the way that they're promoting it? They're trying to keep people's mind focused on nonsense, so they don't focus on what's actually going on the planet. These things
That's why they're keeping everybody in the house.
Yeah, that's what she said. Stay inside and don't
stay
look
inside.
up.
Yeah, say stay inside. Say, oh, he's talking a bunch of nonsense. No, I'm not talking a bunch of nonsense. I have photographic proof of all this stuff. I have photographs of the one that my oldest sister sees every freaking night. And then she said, there are days that it's not there. And if someone wants to talk about stars, they did a stunt about 2 weeks ago where there was a gray haze in the sky where she could not see the moon, the stars, or anything, but she saw those graphs. So there's something definitely going on. There's a major shift going on, and it's not anything to be afraid of. And when they talk about, oh, you might die, oh, you mean I might transition. All these people are afraid, running around, buying up everything, that they tell them to buy up. I remember, anthrax or something?
Oh, yeah.
There was a run on duct tape and plastic.
Oh, my gosh.
Remember that one, right?
And no one was opening their mails.
No one's opening their mail.
Oh, yeah.
Ridiculous little people, shut-ins. Wow, somebody's going to send you some anthrax. Like, you really got something going on that people want to stop when you're just sitting in your house playing video games.
It makes me think like there's these companies that are in on it.
Oh, they are in
on it. Yeah. For sure.
So they decided to do an anthrax campaign.
Yeah, they are in on it. Now, I only heard this story once having to do with the vaccination for Corona that takes 6 months to create. And it just happened, or they started reporting it the end of December. So how could you have like an antidote if you didn't think this was going to happen or something like it was going to happen?
They're offering people here $4,000 to $5,000 to do the test trial of the vaccine. I'm like, you guys put money over everything. Go ahead.
Yeah, nonsense. Look, rather than living my life in fear, I'd rather transition the hell on out of here.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody gets out of this alive anyway.
I've been telling everybody that. I'm like, you guys are only fearing death, and that's the one thing we all have in common. So hypothetically, if we're all going at the same time, wouldn't that be kind of cool? No? Nobody thinks that?
Yeah, it'd be cooler because you're like, yeah, I have a better idea what's going on. They're just, I don't know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Jay, were you gonna say something?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, even that they are able to test it right away and know that it exists, even though they had no idea what it is you know, ridiculous in itself too.
Yeah, it's a bunch of nonsense. But like I said, this one, boy, the PR on this, boy, they're putting a lot of money into it.
Yeah.
I've been saying it's too organized for it to be like just random.
Way too organized.
I served in the Army and I know the procedures. I'm like, I found out about the war like 3 years before it started. I knew they were told us then that it was gonna last over 20 years, and I'm like, here we are 20 years later, still at war.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's all
just
strategic.
manipulating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I give someone else a chance to talk.
It just reminded me of a session that you had with a client who was also in the military, and he was in wars and things, and then he realized how much wars are connected to the other side. And when he went and experienced a personal experience seeing ETs involved in war and how much they're involved in all the goings on the planet. He went and tried to expose everything, and then it ended really bad for him. So it made me think about, how much people don't realize that this is more than just the people around you, more than just the government or the politics. It's things that are on the other side, and how containment is so important with all the.
Well, too, as far as what understanding the things that are on the other side, those have been recorded for a long, long time. A lot of it, things having to do with other entities that you will find, I should say, stemming from like BC or whatever. A lot of that stuff has to do with density that came in from the outside and started messing around. When I took my trip to Tibet, and I ended up fortunately getting a Tibetan guide who actually knew history. He's talked about things from the other side. He told me interesting stories, and he didn't start telling me interesting stories until I let him know that I knew some things about Tibetan culture and so-called Tibetan mysticism. And I don't like to use the word myth. It's a word that the West uses, like superstition. And I had a guy tell me once, an older guy, older than me at the time, was telling me, you know what the definition of superstition is? He says, it's what you believe and I don't. So if someone could say that, if you believe that there are aliens, you're superstitious because I don't believe that there's aliens. Or I could say, well, we're this little area in an extremely vast universe. So I believe there's a lot more consciousness out there, a lot more expressions out there. But because the guy was talking about science, as well, if the scientists don't say that it's so, I don't believe anything unless the scientists say that it's so.
Right.
And it was a blog, and I said, well, so you're saying that scientists know everything there is to know in the whole universe?
Yes.
Well,
I'm like, they're just really deep researchers.
Well, I've been around long enough to see them change their stories about things.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were just animate about certain things. This is that way, and that's the way it is. And then 20 years later, okay, well, it's not really that way. It's something else. And this happened more than a few times.
The food pyramid.
The food pyramid.
The dairy. Bread, and then they're like, people have gluten allergies. They have
right.
Let's change that food pyramid.
Yeah, all of a sudden they decide to make gluten a fear tactic.
Yeah,
also.
right.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I realized that whatever's going on in my energy didn't like wheat. But I didn't know it because, my parents grew up, raised us using the food pyramid.
Yeah.
So when I got old enough to start really looking into alternative ways of dealing with whatever was going on, found out that at that particular point in time, my energy could not handle, was having struggling handling wheat. And once I stopped eating the wheat, then these things that turned into what I call a consciousness called a head cold disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember you taught us about how the reason why density wants you to eat out, eat other people's energy, why the density would like you to eat things that weaken your energy, because when your energy is weakened, your containment is weakened.
Yeah.
When your energy is weakened, attachments can eat on you easier. The density inside can spread faster. And so it's like you're having a battle on all fronts. You know, they say that, battle on all fronts. You're eating things that are dense. You're thinking dense. People are pushing their dense thoughts at you. So it's like, it's like you said how, like these shirts, they have a symbol. It's to bring balance and to unify all your pieces to where you can fend off everything. You said that if at first you're just tasty, like I'm still at the tasty stage, but eventually I want to get to the stage where I'm so damn spicy, nothing can chew on me.
Right.
Well, yeah, literally. I mean, it gets to the point where even something having to do with mosquitoes or whatever. Yeah. And, you know, I continually work because as things in the broader universe are supposed to, you know, they're supposed to expand and constantly expand. Your energy is supposed to constantly grow. There's no ceiling on how wide and how broadly you can expand. But if you're in this zone, they put everything in a box. Oh, this is as much room as you have to expand. You can only be as smart as what we tell you can be as smart as. So they'll like pinpoint certain groups, pinpoint genders. Oh, women can't do this, you know, and then men, oh, men can only do this and that, and so on and so forth. But 9 times out of 10, they'll say, but they can do more than women here, you know. So they've literally been, you know, we live in a sea of lies, literally. You know, and it's a bummer for somebody who's believing in everything and everything that they read. 9 times out of 10, you're reading lies, reading something that's designed to keep your mind closed, keep you down and basically vulnerable. So when I was a kid, they were really pushing the doctor thing, and sometimes they would make fun of the doctorate business. And I think maybe in the 1980s, they started making fun of it because a lot of people started to not go to doctors as much through the 80s, 90s, and probably increasing to now, where they'd have a show where there's medical doctors and then a homeopathic doctor and some alternatives. And we'd have this AMA doctor calling the homeopathic, guy a quack. But then you look at the screen, the guy who's yelling at the homeopathic guy, telling him he's a quack, is overweight, doesn't look like he's done a push-up in his life. And you look at the homeopathic guy, nice, trim, looks very healthy. But you got this obese monster sitting up there. He doesn't know anything about health.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm logically sitting there and my brain is working, I'm going to look at the dude who's pointing his finger at the guy who looks like he's in shape and say, something's wrong here. Mm-hmm. Most doctors I've ever known are not in good shape. Mm-hmm. Most alternative people are in better physical shape. Not that they know everything that's going on, but they definitely know something about health. So when they started to interject doctors, when my parents were bringing us up and so on, into everything that happens, you go to the doctor here in Thailand. If you cough, which is just a purge, the Thai person goes, "Maisabay, you're not well. Go see the doctor. Literally, go see the doctor." And I was like, it's just a cough. I'm just, maybe I got a little dust, when I was coughing out. But it was the same way when I was growing up. Anything, it's a doctor. They started giving us antibiotics, penicillin. To the point where you gave you so much penicillin, then whatever attachment that was coming in was immune to the penicillin. So you ended up getting whatever it is, it wanted to, ended up doing whatever it wanted to do to your body anyway after a while. So literally, what they were doing is literally in your mind telling you that you don't have the capacity to heal yourself. But if you look back several generations, and if your parents remember, or if your grandparents are still around and they remember what their parents were doing, they were the doctors in the house. My great grandmother, my grandmother, they were the doctors in the house. Even though my grandmother was a nurse, she still did home remedies. And her brother, including my grandma, they were together on this. Said, if you want to die, go to a hospital.
My dad used to say that when I was growing up, because he does a lot of home remedies. He's a lot older.
Yeah, and they both lived into their 90s. My grandma could have been in her hundreds, but she decided quality of life. I'm not living in a freaking old folks home. I'm out. Her brother, when we went to her funeral, he said, "Yeah, she's 99." He said, "I don't want to be around that long." So he got into his 90s and he checked out.
If people could see on the other side what hospitals really look like, they would never go inside.
There's a lot
It is so haunted. Like people, they avoid haunted houses, right? Because it's old looking and the wood is rotten and there's a bats and stuff. But if they could see hospitals, they'd be like, "Oh, I am not going in there." It's got tons of ghosts and they're all not happy. And like there's also all kinds of entities feeding. It's like it's like a supermarket for density.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom was, before she passed, in the last 7 years, she was experiencing serious attachments, and her mind was in denial, so there was very little that I could really do to help her through what she was doing. It's just like she did, she'd tell me one thing, and then she would do something else. She'd ask me about, how to deal with this, and then she would do something else. So she was in one of these old, it was like a seniors apartment complex. Another word for old folks home, but they have their own apartments, senior apartment complex. And the things that my younger sister saw there, who I tell you sees a lot on the other side, was really freaking bizarre. Really bizarre. The things that come in and out, she'd see our mom sitting on the couch, then all of a sudden her position would change, and all of a sudden she's looking at a man inside of our mother's energy. So because of her denial and also hanging on to anger as well. So density loves people hating one another because it weakens you also. Being angry, and it takes energy to be angry. I know, because I was angry when I was younger about a lot of stuff. But I realized that it would just do something to my energy, and I wouldn't feel that balance once I would get into the anger thing. And what happens is that you may come up in a culture of a bunch of angry people and say, "Yeah, we have the right to be angry about this. We have the right to be angry about that. We have the right to be angry," all these things. But once you get away from them, you start to feel a certain way. So when I moved away from that environment and was on my own, moving from Los Angeles to New York City, I was there by myself. I was tuning into myself, and I just noticed that there was a certain kind of a balance that was going on. I decided that I was not going to deal with relationships. At that point, I didn't know for how long, but it ended up lasting about 2.5 years, where I was just by myself. Go to work, come back, do my projects, and so on and so forth. No interest in any, sexual relationships or anything like that. And you have the urge, but there's ways to deal with that. So by the end of those 2 years, I was really more into my own company than being around anyone else. By the time I got that balance with myself, all of a sudden, when I was younger, it was like this weird game of relationship and interacting, and it was always kind of difficult. I said, "I'm later for it." By that time, I had them knocking on my door, trying to get in. At the time, I didn't realize it was density trying to mess with me. But at the time, I was like, "It's kind of cool. I don't have to, I don't have to go to the club. I don't have to do, I don't have to have my, in my generation, and in the neighborhood, a guy had to have a rap. you know, you got to rap, which means when you talk to a woman, you got to have a line, you know, and more just
Oh,
these lame
yeah.
lines. I mean, there were guys who were really professional at this stuff. You know, it's like a career choice or something, you know. So you had to have a rap. And what the rap was, it meant, what's your chain of lies, the chain of lies you're going to use to get her out of her clothes?
Right.
So anyway, like I said, I got to the point where I was able to start seeing more and more things that connected me to the other side that I was experiencing through my life anyway. And some of the stories in my book are around that particular time when things started coming in, and they didn't like that I was finding balance, even though I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing, but I was finding balance. But then I ended up, okay, wow, cool, relationship. Oh, okay, you know, and yeah, then the trouble started. You know, relationship after, when like chains of relationships, but you know, certain relationships would always inevitably end up at loggerheads or just locking horns. So even if you're a woman and you're trying to reason with a male who's going off the rails all of a sudden that you know, for some reason, there's something in there that doesn't want peace. So as a male, the other way around, I'm dealing with someone who's got some issues that they claim they have about me. I said, well, you know, let me have it. And they put it out. Okay, I get you. I understand. I feel what you're saying. I say, okay, are we good? No. No. Okay, this is illogical. That's when I started to really understand attachments and really how they work. And then what Ms. A was saying about the MCs are the backup. So when you're containing things from the outside, there are things that have seeped in to your programming from outside before you start to contain. So you already have contamination inside, and then you're doing battle with that stuff. But the clearer you get, the easier it'll be for you to see what's going on inside of your head, or inside of your energy, really is what it is, inside of your energy. And also, when you contain yourself, you start to see what's going on with other people's energy. And also, when you start to contain individuals, you start to sense their personalities changing. It tends to get a little easier, a lot easier in most cases. We've had situations where someone's just really just got a bug up their butt, and you know, and you just show up at the desk, and they got a bug up their butt, and I'm like, oh man, I got to contain this person. I'm containing, and I used to get mad at those around me. That, you know, I don't do that anymore, but I get mad and say, you better do something about this person, or else I'm going to show my butt. So the person goes away, they come back, it's like a totally different person showed up at the desk. And this happened more than a few times.
People don't understand how fragmented a consciousness can be. When you look at a person, you think, oh, it's so-and-so, it's Tom, it's John. It's like, no, you're looking at maybe 100 different fragments of that person, depending on how damaged they are.
Right.
And they could, at any time, show you 100 faces. So people, it's like, why do you want a relationship when you're so broken already? You're not even whole yet, and you're going to go grab someone else who's really broken too.
Oh my goodness. That's like the biggest issue with the people who are coming to me is, I'm like, you know, you need to work on you before you try to go be with this person, because all you want to do is try to fix that person, but it isn't until you can fix you that you can even attempt to try to fix somebody else. And they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like,
yeah, I kind of call them pigeons, the things that they listen to. You're all right, you're straight, your energy's good. It's everybody else. But in reality, their pigeons are telling them that they're straight, you know, so you get together with somebody, she's got a problem, man. Or a woman, he's got a problem. When in reality, both of you got a problem.
We have a client that she is doing better, and she's getting a business opportunity that could really help move her along. And she, in the midst of that, she has this dream. And in the dream, I guess this young, handsome guy shows up. He has a taxi. And then she's like, she gets in the taxi, and then he drops her off. And he's like, you have a nice day. And across the street, there's these two little women like, ooh, he likes you, ooh, you know. And she tells us the dream. And then Chief translates the meaning of it. And you were talking about how the pigeons were across the street, like, oh, you know, maybe oh, maybe you shouldn't think about business right now because you still haven't had a relationship, you know. But it's like they don't want you to move forward in your evolution, in your progression. Just stay right here in the moment.
Well, because the program wants you to believe that the most important thing, part of your existence, is having a relationship. You know, if you don't have a relationship, you're not whole. When in reality, you're whole regardless as to whether you can be whole, regardless as to whether you have what's called a relationship or not. 9 times out of 10, bringing a relationship is bringing in problems.
Yeah.
And I know it's difficult if someone, you know, wants to interact with, you know, with the opposite sex or whoever it is that you want to react with someone to become a partner. When you're working on yourself and they're not, and then you try to help them, but, you know, you still have to take into consideration you're coming up against a fortress when you're coming in with your type of energy, and when the things that you know that benefits you, you're coming up against their, you know, their wall.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing, you know, when you first see people, it's like a little person from the watchtower yelling out at you to say, "Hey, how you doing there?" You know. And but when you get to them and they open that drawbridge, it's like, whoa. You know, chaos. You know, chaos in the kingdom, literally. So, you know, you've been literally, you know, running around getting all the troublemakers in your kingdom, you know, getting rid of them, you know, and then identifying the intricacies of the kingdom, your kingdom, and you're just, you know, and you're feeling good. Your things are going better. You understand the strength of your own mind. That your mind is very, very key to everything. That's why they program. There's commercials and there's billboards and there's music and all this stuff. It's to mess with your consciousness, your mind, how you think. So when you take all that back, you got the picture.
Okay. I know you guys probably seen the Flying Dutchman and the guy with the it's on Pirates of the Caribbean. And they have the guy with the octopus beard here, and then like these characters here. Yeah. So.
Well, this is an opportunity to talk about what people come. What I see this when people come to my studio. I wouldn't tell them in the beginning because I want to scare the crap out of them. This guy's crazy. He's telling me I'm just, you know, a decaying husk or something. But this is what happens. I used to always just liken being in this realm to swimming around in a cesspool. You're going to get some stink on you, a lot. And they want you to just sit in there. That's why they work on the mind. There's no way out. This is the way. I used to hate to hear this when I was in my teens. Someone said, "Well, that's the way it's always been."
Yeah.
And I'm like, even at that point, I said, nothing's always been anything. Well, how come there's no more dinosaurs then? If everything's always been, you know. So there's all these programs that they run, all this illogical nonsense that they tell you to accept, to the point when you won't even look for logic. You just accept the nonsense that's being told.
Like, for example, on this, you can see that they're being taken over by creatures that have fused themselves to their energy. When you have a program that you accept as a part of who you are, that's exactly what happened. It's almost like for example, in this picture, the octopus became his beard. The attachment becomes you when you believe it is you. And that's why whenever you start having sessions, she will pull things off. And when people resist, like, no, I like this behavior. It's who I am. That's whenever it's hard to rip that stuff off. And also that's why we tell people, you know, don't focus on relationships. If you could see Jack the way he really looks like, you would run from him because he looks like this.
Well, you can think of relationship, but the first relationship you should consider is your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
That's the best one so far.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I recently told a client, I was like, I've been in this 3 more months. I've been in this for about 9 years, and I still half my energy's got barnacles on it. And it's still working on me.
Well, because, you know, you get to the point you're pulling the big things off, and then next thing you got a pair of tweezers, and you're pulling out splinters.
The little splinters.
You know? Yeah. So she's gone, you know, she's evolved a lot from the first time that, she met my daughter and who she is now. But one of the things that I do share with people is how denial keeps you from moving forward. So someone who doesn't want to be looked at as someone who has faults, and we've all probably met these individuals. I don't have any faults. I don't, and I don't want to look at it. So these are individuals that will sit there with all the barnacles, and they're claiming their barnacles because they don't want anyone to actually tell them the truth. Like their minds feel that there's either something extremely wrong with them, they're weak, they're faulty, there's nothing that they can do if they accept themselves as being faulty. So it's not about, being faulty. It's about realizing that you have this stuff going on in your life that could actually, if you deal with it, you can improve your life. Just basic things of individuals who will refuse to admit when they've made a mistake, misstep. I like to call mistakes as an opportunity to learn. So if someone has made a misstep, they consider it a mistake, and then they just don't want to look at it, then it does not become an opportunity to learn. Mm. So even when I was a little kid, I really liked to see what I could do to improve who I was as a person, or as a kid, I'd say as a person, because I wasn't thinking consciousness at the time. And if I was doing something, like I ended up stuttering for a while, and that probably had to do with nerves or something like that when I was a kid. But I challenged it, and I felt that I was going to, I didn't know if I could actually overcome it, but I knew I was going to give it a shot, and I did overcome it. And there was a number of things that I found, okay, I would look at whatever this thing was that I was doing, which probably had something to do with programming and learned behavior that didn't make any logical sense to me. I found that I could override it and change it. Then it got to the point where I didn't have any issues around denial. And if there is something that I'm not seeing and someone points it out to me, even if they point it out to me angrily, I'll go back and I'll look at it. And whenever I had issues with relationships, the first person I would look at was myself. Then I would look at them, and then I go, okay, there are some issues here. What am I doing? Oh, I definitely, made a misstep there. Why would I say something like that? Or why would I want to do something like that? Then I started to dismantle myself. But the problem with being in a relationship together, and that's the way that you're approaching it, a lot of times the other partner is not going to approach it. Mm-hmm. Said, look, I definitely, that was wrong, that did that, and I did that, that was really screwed up. They said, yep, everything you do is wrong. Mm-hmm. Everything I do is not wrong now. I'm exonerated. I don't even have to look at myself.
Recently, Chief talked to me about denial in general, and he said it's like denial is like a scorpion that you feel is your pet. And you think, oh, I've known this scorpion for a long time. I don't need to get rid of it. We've been friends. And then light beings are like, no, you should really give that up because it's not for you. It's not going to benefit you at all. But I'm like holding on to it. And then light beings have to let it bite you so that you can realize that you got to let it go. For example, Chief told me, you have some panic issues. And I denied it at first. And I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah, we won't get into the incident, but okay, go ahead.
But then I went on my own and was like, Chief's always right. And I'm like, yeah. And then I was like, I know. Okay, so I need to accept this issue about panic. And then I realized, why I don't want to accept this issue about panic? Because I don't want to admit that there's anything that I have similar to my parents. Because I don't want to be like them. Over everything, I don't want to be like them. So it's like, if I admit that I have some panic issues, then I'm admitting to being like them. And it's like I was putting myself in a box, like 1 + 1 has to equal 2. Well, and it was creating like a turmoil in my energy. And finally I was like, you know what? I can accept this. It's okay because Chief has given me tools and I can let this go because it doesn't define me. I am consciousness and I am of supreme consciousness and that's my worth. Not some relatives who popped me out That doesn't mean anything. And
I
so
know.
when I did that, I freed myself. And I kept telling myself, I will let go of every scorpion that I have. I will let it go so I can be free. And after that, man, I could breathe easy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, your interpretation is a little different from what I had said, but you know, it basically is in the ballpark. Literally, even when you're talking about scorpions, and but literally, it was about something that's damaging to yourself. So if we talk about, you know, the scorpions, and you've been walking around with these since you could remember, you know, as long as you can remember, and they're stinging you, but that's, you know, you never knew anything other than the sting of these scorpions. So it's just, oh man, you know, or someone, I have clients who come and they have a weird kind of numbness in their, you know, in their left hand or something, or stinging in their left hand. But they've had it ever since a kid. They just figure, well, that's just the way I am, and so on. But they get to a certain point in their lives where they just feel, maybe there's something I can do about this. But some of the stinging is so mild in a sense, or more of an irritation, that you don't really pay attention to it. And it's literally an attachment that's feeding on your energy, that's basically causing, you know, trouble in your life. The part about the denial and being afraid of being that person is, it goes along with the people telling a kid, or one parent telling a kid, you're just like your father, or you're just like your mother. And you as a kid, you can see, you know, kids see a lot, and they read the parents, and they'll play their parents. And they'll play them against each other also. So they're looking at their mom who's really forgetful, doesn't seem to do things, you know, quite logically. And so the young girl, you know, she's looking, they're saying, oh, you're just like your mother. Or you talk to someone, a younger person, says, I'm just like my father, I'm just like my mother. You know, women talk about that, they're just like their fathers. So they're programming you into believing you don't have any choice in the way that you behave.
Yeah.
You won't have any choice in the way that you behave. So I had that fear when I was a kid. My father wasn't a totally bad guy, but a short-tempered boy. And he had a limited, you know, scope of certain things. Man worked his butt off, and that was all there is to it. You gotta work, and you gotta work hard, you know. If you don't work hard, if the guy's hands are too soft, you don't know how to. But his temper and his short temper was the thing that was really a concern for me. So I realized, you know, after a certain point, I'm going to challenge this. I don't need to be, you know, in other words, I don't need to embrace the things that I consider to be imbalanced about my father. I don't need to embrace the things I consider to be imbalanced by my mother. And therefore, you worked on those things. You work on those things. I worked on those things. There's no such thing as perfection. Always work in progress. I'm still work in progress. But it's, you know, I'm further along because I don't like to play denial. I don't like to look the other way when something's, you know, glaringly, you know, beating me upside the head and try to pretend that it's not there. Because I'm afraid that someone else is going to see my weakness or something. 9 times out of 10, people who are in denial don't realize that other people do see their weakness. And they do know that you're denying it. But you figure, well, as long as they put my blinders on and I'm not acknowledging anything, I'm cool. When in reality, you just end up, you know, unfortunately for my mom, her anger just ate her alive. She couldn't let go of it. And she had things that really, you know, she shared things with me about her life and in her childhood that were really problematic. But she was still angry about all that stuff. She was angry about social, political stuff, angry about, you know, everything, you know, that America has to offer, you know. And like so many other people, they end up, you know, she ended up going sooner than her mom, my grandmother, whose wits about herself were still more intact than my mother's were when she went in her mid-80s. So again, denial, all of that stuff eats at you. It allows things to eat at you. But one of the things we were talking about with the photo and just claiming attachments, the one guy, he has this octopus beard thing or whatever going on,
Yeah.
and he strokes it and whatever, but it's a major attachment. And even I think in the movie, the octopus plays piano or something.
Yeah, he plays piano with it. And he feeds it, but like, being sad and mopey all the time with it, and plays the organ.
Yeah, so that attachment is a source of, it may be mopey, but it's talented. Look at it, plays piano. Yeah, that's my idea.
Oh, so it's kind of like the certain attention that attachment brings to the person.
Yes. Absolutely. So it'll give you something, some half what thing, said, look, you can, make your tongue into a circle or some kind of thing, something weird, and other people can do, wow, you're really talented, you're really skilled at this weird stuff. But things, just even like playing a musical instrument, there's a part where people do channel other consciousness. I was married to somebody who was a pianist. And when my younger sister was staying with us, she saw her practicing, and she looked into her studio where she was practicing, and she saw her playing and feverishly playing, really going at it, sounding really good. And then after a certain point, she started missing notes. And my sister said, when she starts missing notes like that, the thing that she was tapping into fell out of her body. She saw literally a man fall out of her body.
Wow.
And then fall through the floor.
And it was like some kind of ghost that historically famous pianists.
Yeah, she was doing some other stuff. When people think that this stuff is, talk about superstition, it's not superstition. There's all kinds of things that are going on. We're just seeing like a minuscule fraction of what's going on in the universe with these eyes. And then when we sense things, those of us who sense things, we're still sensing a minuscule fraction. The more you open your energy, as Miss J knows, the more you open your energy, the more you start to feel, right?
Yeah.
Where you're learning how to control your empath abilities that you didn't know you had a year ago.
Right.
Yeah,
that is correct.
You're sensing more, and now you're starting to recognize what you're feeling and what it is and what's trying to move in and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the woman, your ex-wife, was literally tapping out whatever just a tiny bit of energy left in the ghost, and to where it became just dead, or like what we call.
Well, they call it channeling, literally, when someone does that. It's a certain type of channeling. Yeah, when they become, I call it black ooze when a consciousness is tapped out, which means that it's just, there's no more lifetimes. It's just, it's consciousness, but it can't move. It becomes just almost like a table or something like that, or the floor, the planking on your flooring. And that's what I've seen them used as after they tap out the energy of a person's consciousness. We all come in from supreme consciousness, and we all have a certain amount of vibration when we're born into the universe. Things that are aberrations that are very imbalanced, which we would call crazy people in this realm, who feed, they don't act logically, they feed on one another. It's like me starting to eat my own arm or something like that. Literally, that's what they're doing. So they just keep using people, and that's why there's more stress than joy in pretty much everybody's life. I should say everybody's life. I'm certain about this. There's more stress and more down times than up times.
Yeah.
Up times will actually, they allow up times to actually, recharge your battery a little bit, but they don't want you to charge it too much. Because then it's too spicy, as Miss A was saying.
And interesting enough, in the movie, The Pirates of the Caribbean with the Flying Dutchman, once these guys become so covered in attachments, they literally become a part of the ship itself. They become a part of the wood. They meld right into the ship. So the ship is filled with like this dead consciousness, which that's what's black ooze. That's what density has planned for everyone on the planet.
Yeah, you end up becoming building material or anything else that, that they desire to, that these things on the other side desire to use you for. So don't get it that they're so organized that they don't turn each other into black hoos also.
Yeah.
It feeds on itself. And we're in the midst of this feeding frenzy. And I've had individuals ask me, so, you can see all this stuff. So what's our purpose here? I said, your food. And then they go, and then want to just go home and mope. The reality of the matter, what?
You said one line, you said, what's in it for us, though?
All right. It was like,
where's your food? What's in it for us?
yeah, it's like if a mobster is extorting money out of you, what do you mean, what's in it for you? What's in it for you is to keep giving them money until you're broke.
Right.
That's why you have to stay on your journey, because the alternative really sucks.
Definitely. It's funny because a lot of people are like, the people who have been around me and know me, they know that I focus so much on, being alone at home, because I know when I'm at work, I'm always coughing. So they're like, what's happening? I know I'm purging all the energies that are coming in there, but they're like, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's because I smoke, whatever, And then they're like, yeah, and I'm like, and then they're like, well, what are you going to do during the quarantine? I'm like, this is like a dream come true. Like, I'm forced to stay home and do everything I love with just me. Perfect. Like, because I'm in that space where I enjoy the energy that I've created in my own space. So, like, I don't cough when I'm at home. I don't do none of that. As soon as I go outside, I'm like,
That's great. Yeah, I was totally telling another client, like, the coronavirus scam is a perfect excuse for you to tell people not to touch you.
oh, yeah.
Get away from me.
Everywhere I go, I'm like,
Yes.
Well, they have in the supermarkets here in Chiang Mai where there's a guy at the door with one of those kind of thermometer things to read. Yeah, to take your temperature.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, but they don't you don't put it, but they scan your body.
Yeah.
And if your temperature is too high or something, they give you a mask to wear.
And even too low, because I was cold outside and I was on my motorbike and I came off, and then he's like, oh, your temperature too low. Did you ride motorcycle? I'm like, yes. And so I just contained him and contained the machine, and then it read correctly, and I walked in and I was like, ugh. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be amazed how density works. It controls, I should say controlled because but before I would say controls everything. Everything. That's why
I felt like I already practiced for this, Miss A. Remember when you were telling me that I should start eating different and like also containing my food and basically like eat like bird food? I was like, I got this on lock. I'm good. Like less food's fine. Like eat like a bird, like just eat like, vegetables and stuff like that. And when I went to the store, all that was left was all the produce, and I was like, this is perfect.
That's good.
But again, I think I forgot who was asking me about containment and muscle testing. Actually, it's about muscle testing.
Right, muscle testing.
And I do a number of muscle testing. When those of you who've had, all of you've had sessions, and you know that part of my muscle testing, I use Miss A's arm, and for the formal applied kinesiology, those who want to think of it something other than just some voodoo stuff. I use my finger as a means of muscle testing, and it's all the same process where I try to push, in other words, I'm using my middle finger on my left hand right now and trying to push that finger down, and I'm consciously restricting, So then I test my muscle testing by saying hold strong, which means it's not going down, and then I say, release. But I'm also still trying to keep that finger from going down. I say release, and it goes down like that. So for starters, for those who are dealing with this or want to start dealing with this, the best things to muscle test on, for starters, is food. So when you go to a market and you're looking at something that you're interested in eating, I would ask, is this going to benefit my energy? And I'll get a yes or a no. And I found myself just following it, really following it. And I found that it shifted how I felt after I ate. My energy is strong enough to where I can transform energy, but there are things that is so out of whack, that has so many chemicals and things in it, that your body gets tired trying to recover from it. So one of the things, when I would have something that had too many chemicals in it, I would purge from my underarms a really foul smell. So with food, again, just to test, because if there's something that's around you that wants to mess with that, you have to, in your mind, do a trick. In other words, there's a pattern. If you say, go hold strong, release, go hold strong, release, something around that wants to mess with you will notice your pattern. They may not be reading your mind, but they notice your pattern, and then they go, okay. They'll make you release when you say, oh, look, pizza with salami, good for my energy? Yes. Then you go, okay, something's up. And that's how I would trick them up. I would go to things that I know weren't good for my energy. And then I find that I had a weird lock in my finger. Then I would clear, or I would focus on whatever it is, because the mind is very, very powerful. Whatever it is that's interfering with my muscle test, I am Pac-Manning. Contain it. And then I take it into the vortex. There you go, in your mind, you go, okay, release. You go, okay, I was strong. And then you do it again, and then you switch it up again, and then you're good to go.
I had to do that just now because I was trying to do what you told me, and I'm like, my finger's not working. I need to continue Pac-Man, whatever it is, and then it's working now.
Yeah, because you're, in the end, you're swarming with things. But as I'm pulling them out, obviously there's less, because whenever people have sessions, they always feel lighter. Because I pull a lot of weight off of you. It doesn't mean that you're totally clear. I've had individuals. We had a client from Morocco, and it's a mother of a client. And when she came in, it was like, it was like a dilapidated building that was just about to fall over. We have lots of termites. As soon as I started working on her, both myself and Ms. A started itching like crazy.
My legs. I'm like, I feel really weird.
Yeah. But again, to me, it was just a challenge. Yeah. So what I did, I had to build scaffolding, energetic scaffolding, just to keep it from falling over when I started to pull out all the dead wood. And and her spine had scoliosis. She was just a mess, And she still is struggling, but her back started to straighten. She feels a lot better. Not as much pain. That was her first session. And granted, she's down for coming, a couple times, a month, because, it's working. And her son is the one who introduced her. And he introduced her because he had some issues. And his first one was really, really interesting. He was being tormented by ghosts, and he'd never seen ghosts before in his life. And this was back in early December, somewhere like that, early December of last year. And so, delved in, found out what the connections were and so on, and we got that under control. So he turned his mother onto me. But it's interesting that, people will come in and they'll just really be just in real bad shape. And then say, okay, am I good now? How many sessions do I need? I said, it depends on how much crap I find in your house.
Right.
Yeah.
I got to pull up floorboards. I got to dig through everything.
Hey, all right. I was just gonna say, thank you for today. I didn't want to I have another appointment at 12:30. But I appreciate your time, and also it's nice to have a conversation with people who have, similar perspectives. So thank you for leading that.
Okay, well, thanks for joining. Thanks for
presenting. Thank you.
All right.
You too.
Speaking of that, whenever you talked about the woman with scoliosis, whenever you were straightening her spine, you were talking to the body itself, because your body, it wants to be healthy. It wants to be balanced. And the less attachments that you have, the more your body can go back into its natural balance that it wants to be. It wants you to be healthy. It really does.
Yeah, it wants balance. But the program is designed to throw everything out of balance. So they need the program of the body just to keep the body intact long enough for them to just drain you of your energy over and over again. So if the body was just to go along with the program of just doing anything and everything to just deplete you, then they wouldn't get that much out of you. It's like a battery that can be recharged, a rechargeable battery. But as you know, with rechargeable batteries, even in this realm, that eventually you can't recharge them anymore. And that's where we end up with what we call black ooze, dead batteries. Just enough charge just to be, just barely enough charge to exist.
Oh, yeah, I remember I dealt with the black ooze last year. When I kept spitting up that stuff, I was like, ugh.
Yeah, it comes out in the stool, in the blood, in the.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we've had a number of situations where clients want to start pulling certain things out, and a lot of the sessions have to do with me talking, because consciousness is listening, and they react to the energy of what I'm saying. So you can be saying whatever is one of the things. I'm going to just switch a little bit, having to do with individuals who lie, who will lie to you. And once you get your energy to a certain point, you will ignore pretty much what they're saying, but you'll be tapping into their intent. So someone who's telling you, oh, I adore you, I'll do everything that you want, and I'll be the best person because I'm going to make that effort. And then you're just looking, and your face might get a little bit scrunched up if you're empathing. Because what you're empathing is this person's not, he's not good, or they're not going to do what they say they're going to do. They're just trying to play me so they can get in, tap into my energy, feed whatever their masters are, and then deplete me. And then after a certain point, like when the individuals will deplete a person's bank account, and then they disappear. So that's one of the things also having to do with what I do. It's about literally learning how to read intent over the words, also over a person's facial expressions. So I've been going through, and it's not really going through a thing, it's kind of funny, because when I really started doing a lot of work, my vision started to get impaired in a really weird way. In a really weird way, So not to the point where an ophthalmologist said, what is it, cataracts or something? Nah, I can't find anything. I said, was it, well, I forgot what the other, little things that, could be an eye problem. I said, I can't find anything. I said, so what's up? And he said, oh, you're just getting old. I'm like, okay. His density's talking. I said, that's bunk. But one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of times individuals will come into my studio, because whatever it is a blind spot that was created almost like something seared and burned right in the center of my vision. I can see pretty well peripherally, but it's almost like looking through steam. But I noticed that I wasn't able to see the expression on most people's faces. So I'm just reading their energy, and I'm reading the intent behind what they're saying. So there are individuals who come and they'll sit on the table, and I will pick up something. I said, you smoke? I said, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
I said, you smoked in your life. I know you smoked in your life. I'll muscle test them, and they don't know what I'm saying when I muscle test them. I don't say anything. I said, has this body smoked? And bam, it smoked. So I do a little clearing. Next thing, oh yeah, 16 years ago, I stopped smoking.
And I'm like, that means you smoke.
But that's
right.
I have it regularly.
Yeah, it's so common that we don't even ask questions anymore.
I have regularly with someone, and a lot of times they legitimately don't remember. Because that's also how density works. It messes with people's memory. Observing my mother going through dementia, it was things messing with her memory. One of the things that my sister saw at the house, that the seniors apartment, was something manifesting down this hallway. She said the light bulbs were not the best. The lighting wasn't the best, but she said right at the end of the hallway, she saw something like a cloud of something manifest. And it was like, then it looked like this, the classic goat man thing. Then she said, then it transformed into an old woman.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, that the woman was walking towards her. And she said, how do you do? Because she said, maybe it's my eyes. Maybe I'm just, something's up with my eyes. She said, how do you do? And the old woman looked at her and went, Arr! And then she's just like, okay. And then as the woman walked past her and then looked at her again, went, Arr! Again, she said, you got me again. And she said it was a physical woman that she saw walk the rest of the way and around the corner down the hallway. Go ahead. No, I was going to say, there's a lot of weird stuff, and I know a number of you have experienced weird stuff from the time you were children, that others like, oh, it's your imaginary friends, or you're just, or just imagining things. That stuff is real, man.
Nora asked about shapeshifters. Are there light ones and dense ones?
They're both. There are light ones. There are certain ones that are orbs that you may run into in the forest, and they will shapeshift into things like a tree or something like that, or you'll see them absorb into a tree. Then you have the ones who are shapeshifters that walk around amongst us. We've had clients that actually, more than a few people, and I've even read, books, but I actually met people who actually had experienced individuals who would turn into a reptilian in front of them. Or a woman who got in a fight with her boyfriend who they were always fighting, and probably because he's feeding on her energy, and they had the worst relationship, but she traveled from one country and he'd track her to that country, under the guise of getting back together, and it would always be this, back and forth locking horns. And she said one day they had this real bad argument, they're in Spain or somewhere, and he jumps on his bicycle and he's speeding off, and he looks, and she says he's watching him, ride off, and as he turns around, she says there's a reptile face looking at her.
I've had that happen recently where I see, like if I come in contact with a certain person or like I'll shake their hand or something like that, like before I put myself in these situations, I contain myself and do all that stuff. And then as of recently, I've seen 2 people, or I've shaken their hand, and they're like up there in the industry. And like this one girl I met her probably like 2 weeks ago, and I saw her eyes go from like the human looking eye to like the reptile eye, and it was just one that went and I was like, I wasn't scared, but I thought it was so cool because I kind of recognized what it was. But then I was like, all right, I can't stay here for long, but that was cool that I saw that. But in a movie way, I was like, whoa.
It's happened to you. You said that happened to you.
Yeah, when I was in college, I came to class, and like you're just looking for somewhere to sit, and then I see this chick, see this lady sitting next to me, and I'm looking at her, and suddenly I'm looking at this like alligator head starting to come out of her face, and I'm just like, why am I looking at this? Why? And I came back and I told your daughter, I was like, she had an alligator head, and then you told me it's because she's a reptilian, and you're just seeing what she looks like energetically.
Yeah, because they're shape-shifting. The nation's people talked about it. All the other cultures who, closer to Gaia talks about these things. It's just
now, are they conscious that they're shapeshifters, or is just something that's taking over
conscious.
them?
They all know what they are. Those that you see shift like that, they know what they are. They know that they're feeding.
Okay.
And in industries, there's a lot of them there. I remember that there was some young guys who used to put YouTube videos up, and some of it was kind of weird. That you could say, maybe it's just some kind of glitch, but there are a number of them that like, I think this is real.
Oh,
I had someone in my house who he literally had one inside of him, and it was some cannabis I hadn't smoked in a long time or anything, like years. And he brought me this stuff because we're trying to do something having to do with my vision or whatever. And as I'm starting to feel the effects, I'm talking to him, and I see his face starting to turn green. And then I start to see like, you know, the patterns from like a reptilian skin. And then I'm laughing and said, wow, man, you're turning green like a reptile.
I told him. I didn't know you told
Yeah, I did tell him. And he
You said
"Oh,
it to him?
that's ingenious." So sometimes there are, they're not really shapeshifters, but they're inside of a person's energy. There's a lot of times when we work on someone, Ms. A, since she's empathing and her empathing is getting stronger and stronger and stronger, there's things that she sees on a much deeper level. And she'll tell me when I'm pulling something, she said, this one's laying down inside of the body. And this, we've seen this pretty regularly, that there's something laying inside of the body. I had a client from Laos who talked about he knew that he had two different personalities in him.
And they would control him.
And they would control him. To the point where he's laying on the table, he said, I'm sick of it. So there are people who know that there's things going on. So a shapeshifter is a person who is actually reptilian, but they change their form. And these are the ones that, like what you saw, Neo Shamanic Nelly was the one that you shook hands with. They usually have positions, you know, sort of so-called power positions. The other ones who are the Palladian types, and they don't do much shape-shifting because they look like people. But there's certain telltale signs, and primarily for me, it's just their energy, how they vibrate. Or if I'm looking at them and they get really uncomfortable. And it's not like I'm looking at them, like staring at them really hard.
Yeah, I experienced that a lot, their uncomfortableness.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable.
Or like I've
energy.
gotten like people's mouth like shivering, and I'm like, oh, you're one of those. Got it.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, you said, wow, this is, you know, weird, but it's what I like when, what was it? There was something that happened, and I was just going by faith, by what I felt I knew. This is what's, you know, this is what's happening on the other side. But I forgot what it was that happened, that's something that just totally proved exactly. But they were trying to scare me, and I said, wow, bravo, you just proved to me.
The chair stacking?
Well, the chair stacking was one, yeah, in Woodstock, New York. But there was something else that happened since we were here and since we were working, where something was doing something that, oh, we're going to scare you. I said, wow, they really can do this stuff. Bravo, bravo. I said, what the hell? You know, then they leave, you know. I said, but no, you can't leave. I got you. And I throw them in the vortex. So it's great once you get rid of this illusion, this program of fear, you start to appreciate your ability to sense these things. You start to appreciate the ability to understand that it's not a myth. That's some fairy tales and all this stuff. This stuff really exists. Therefore, you have control.
Yeah, after I shook her hand, I was like, vortex of no return. Like, get off me. Like, I felt, I was like, not today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the stronger you get, usually when you start, your energy levels start to get higher because there's a lot of starvation going on their side, because Gaia is also, she's shifting. And it has to do with the consciousness outside, not some little person on the planet saying, I'm saving Gaia. When that comes up, realize it's pigeons. Because, you know, what we show you a picture of, these people all jacked up with all kinds of holes in them. Yeah, you're really sturdy. You're going to save this big consciousness. No, the consciousness outside aren't messed up like this. But they were definitely barred from getting in. And once the barriers went down, that's when they started showing up. And it had to do with work from the inside. That's all I'm going to say as to why the barriers started coming down. And what my sister was saying with Corona, she said, if they're not reporting what we're obviously seeing, and that the military jets are trying to, like, you know, maneuver around, you know Corona's bull crap. Why aren't they telling you that the planet is slowly being surrounded by light ships? There's always been ships out there, but they weren't.
Oh wait, I saw something that wasn't it something that they were saying that China recently saw 5 suns?
Oh, interesting.
Or something like that.
5 suns.
Yeah, they're ships.
Yeah, they looked like, I was like, that's not a sun. It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, they're ships.
And all recently.
All right, we have a young woman who's a new client who had an experience. It was last week where she's staying at this house that's in the mountains, so it's not that close to the city. And there was a boom or something, she said, in the distance, and then all the electricity went out. And she also said that she said that she's kind of like, traditional Thais are convinced that ghosts, to be afraid of ghosts, though I've met Thais who aren't afraid of them. But she said she was definitely afraid of ghosts and all this stuff. And there were obviously ghosts in the house because I told them they were, and and so on and so forth. So she said that the lights went out, but she said for some reason she did not have a fear. And at a certain point, there was like the bamboo in there, it was like rattling and it was hitting the house. And then she just found herself going out on the deck to see what was going on. And then she heard this like a low bass kind of a noise coming from a distance. And then as the noise moved above her, I believe, if I'm telling it exactly how she was telling me, all of a sudden the bamboo started rattling again to the point where it was rattling so hard that she couldn't hear the humming, but all of a sudden she heard like a like that, and it took off and her hair flew up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I said you were experiencing light beings. I said I tapped in, you're experiencing light beings, that's why you weren't afraid. She said it was really odd. She said she had no fear. She said she was out there kind of like, if I'm ready for whatever.
Yeah, she's like,
right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Like if it's time to go, let's go.
Yeah, she said, I'm ready for whatever. Yeah.
I will say that understanding death more and what it is and how it's just a transition also aided me in releasing the fear, because anytime we fear things, it's because it's 9 times out of 10 the unknown. And it's like, if you even release that, it's like, okay, we don't know what death is, but if you can accept that it's gonna happen, it's just like you just surrender to like just the flow of life, the cycle of it. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you just remain conscious and present, it's like there's so much more to enjoy out of this human experience than fear.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I feel that in a sense, that's one of the reasons that even with what's going on, that we are still here expressing, because this is an expression, even though it was this major aberration in the universe that was not going along with balance in the universe.
The pimple on the butt of the universe.
Yeah, I gotta call this realm as a pimple on the ass of the universe. Because it is not. It's
accurate. It's so accurate.
Yeah. Because again, another telltale is like someone announcing, "Is there other life out in the universe?"
Right.
And they still say stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's logic. They try to train people out of logic. That's why folks are running around crazy right now. Logic has been trained out of them.
And then I tell people all the time, like, think about what they're telling us to do to prevent this virus. Wash your hands, cough into your arm, stay home. And it's like, keep your distance from people. I'm like, the normal human thing to do? I get it. Well, I'm like, it's so like basic. I'm like, y'all went and bought toilet paper and the side effect is not sitting on a toilet. I got it.
Well, again, Ms. A was talking about, and I decided to post a few things since people would ask me about it. And I posted one where we just basically looked up, stats, from certain organizations that are supposed to be legitimate organizations. And, and we got the stats for up to that day for the number of people dying of this fake disease, Corona.
Yes.
And then the number of people who die per month in car accidents worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So even though I believe that the numbers for Corona are fake, but they had stats for car accidents. And I think the Corona ended up being 2,000 something per month. At this point, 3 months, 2,000 people a month.
Yeah.
Car accidents, 3,600 and something a month.
Yep.
Even obesity out here, people are going to the drive-thru with their face masks on. I'm like, the whole point is to eat better and live longer. But you guys are still killing yourselves and you're protecting it from a virus that And I tell people all the time with all the tests, I'm like, it isn't until they tell you that you have it that you're consciously inviting the virus within your mind. Because I'm like, if a man created a computer to think like man, computers carry viruses, and the viruses goes into the motherboard of the computer, which is the base. It doesn't go on the keyboard or the screen on the outside or the hardware on the outside. It goes internally. It isn't until we accept that we have whatever this virus is that we start feeling the symptoms. And I'm like, it's like the whole placebo effect. And they're like, what? I'm like, never mind.
Well, to actually tag on to that, I had friends when I started college. It was around the time after the Vietnam so-called war, which is another nonsensical thing. And I knew guys who were vets who had been over there. And there was one guy that we became close friends with. So he would tell me certain stories, and he told me about guys who died of shock in Vietnam. He said there are guys who died from getting shot in the arm or leg.
Oh, wow.
The mind shut down their bodies.
Oh.
Tells you how powerful the mind is.
Mm-hmm.
If they can condition and trap your mind, they can get you to do anything. Or doctors telling people, oh, you have 1 month to live. The majority of them will die within 1 month. The ones who resisted went on forever. My favorite relatives, my great uncle, I think I might have told the story of him having an accident when he was in his 40s on his second job, where the freight elevator released while he was walking out, hit his hard hat, broken in half, and caught him along the stomach. So it was him holding up this elevator with his stomach. And when they released, they had to cut out some intestinal tract and so on and so forth. The doctor says, doctor's going to make it through the year. He was in his 40s. He died in his 90s. He transitioned in his 90s. Those folks, very strong-willed people. Grandmother or brother, very strong-willed people. It's the mind that will kill you faster than anything else.
Yes.
Depression, the mind will kill you faster than anything else. Stress, the mind will kill you faster than anything else.
I remember we were passing by a temple and a hospital, and I remember thinking about putting a containment barrier around the hospital or the temple. And for some reason, there was like these voices that were like, oh, you're not strong enough. That's like too big. And then you told me you can contain, there's nothing you can't contain. And I was like, man, I limited myself. It's like I felt too weak to do it. It's like I accepted the voices. But now, after you told me that, I'm like, I can do this.
Yeah. Program is to limit you. Yeah. Everything is to limit you. But there's so much noise when you start doing this that you have to weed through it. So, it's not like, I believe it. And now you got a lot of noise. You got a lot of things.
It gets louder and louder too.
Yeah. So it's not going to be, like a 1 week course and all of a sudden, And two, I wouldn't trust most people with their damage anyway, because they want to just be able to control other people. I control this, I control you. Right. Said, that's not what it's about, man. Yeah. Control yourself. Later for controlling everybody else. Don't even try, because you're going against balance if you try to control other people.
Yeah, remember we were talking about a lot of people, their concept of balance or their concept of enlightenment is like Avatar or something, where they control water and earth and air and all kinds of things. Like their concept of total balance and lots of energy is to control others, which is totally a dense concept.
Yeah, or it's the little stories that they like. I control master of the universe. I am in human form. This frail, just pot-filled, vulnerable thing. I control the universe. I said, okay. Illogic. What is that? Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
A woman with mental issues. She controls all the energy of the universe? Come on, really? It's illogical. Some dude who, I'm the most powerful. Talk about fairy tales. Then they call real stuff myths. This is entertainment. Even the Pirates of the Caribbean, the picture we showed you, they make fun of you. They're showing you what they do to you.
Right.
Then tell you, oh, it's fantasy. There's a number of sci-fis that they tell you what they're doing to you. Oh, it's just fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Check them out properly, and you'll start to get more information. They'll say, oh, you're just believing in fantasy. No, because I can segue this into my real existence, my real life. I've had enough clients now, which is really cool. You know, I've had a lot of clients, and a lot of people's experiences intersect with one another, and they don't even know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Same things come up. Same beings show up.
Even in this movie, they have this thing, it's like a dead man's dice or some kind of gambling game where they literally gamble away their all they can gamble is more time on the ship. So more time being cursed, more time in density. And that's literally what people do. Most people who have a lot of money, they think, oh, it's because I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. No, they literally sold their soul for someone else's.
Yeah, I've had, I was aware of that before, but now that I've had a number of people coming in, a number of clients coming in, I've had men who lay on the table, who are doing well, but their bodies are falling apart because their contract is up. So I will ask them, I'll say, you signed the contract. And I figure he's probably going to deny this. I'll say, you signed the contract, haven't you? And they'll go, maybe. One went, maybe like that. Another one said, yeah, I've signed quite a few contracts. And he knows what kind of contracts I'm talking about. Not papers with a lawyer. There are people who know what they did to get this finite expression called, resources and money in a big house. And then when the contract's up, they just literally said, contract's up, come. But there's a bunch of them running around trying to get out of their contracts. So you see certain old, crotchety old guys running around, still running around. They got a lot of money, but they look like crap. Their contracts are up. You got to pay your pound of flesh for their game. They created the game, and you believe in their game, you're going to be subject to it.
And I'm always around those types of people where that I could tell like they signed the contracts to get to where they're at, and then I'm standing next to them, and I'm like, it's kind of cool that I've been able to get to the place where I'm at today based off of Neo Shamanism, and it's just me using my light, my energy, and I'm like, I didn't have to give up shit. I'm like, if anything, I'm like, there's a totally other way to do this, guys, but you guys don't want to hear that. I get it. It takes a lot of work, and it's just like for me, it's a beautiful thing. My like being able to sit back and just see how much I've benefited off of my journey, just not even wanting anything anymore, and it's like. Yeah. Not wanting anything anymore has gotten me to more places than I could ever imagine when I did think that I wanted certain things. Yeah. And it's just like so freeing because I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't owe anybody anything. I'm just grateful and like, continue my practice. And even now that I the more places that it takes me, I'm just like, but I still don't want anything. Like, I'm just so like grateful for just being and present that I'm just like, oh, this is all right. This is cool. Whereas before I'd be like, I have to have it. And now it's like,
yeah.
But
cool. With that balance, but also what you're saying with the balance, it makes it really quite interesting and quite entertaining when things show up that you weren't even expecting. And those things that show up once you start to get into balance are not going to be something that's negative. You will see certain things trying to slip in, but because you have awareness, you can sense, you just block them. Them. They're not as strong as they pretend to be.
And for me, reverting back to what I said earlier about how my mom thought that piece of paper was something big, before I used to envision that like that. Like I used to see those obstacles that big, and now I'm just like, like how you said, and it's just like the mind is so powerful. It's literally just shifting your perspective and just understanding the why we're here, what we are.
Yeah. But even with Ms. A, you were talking about with, the environment that you came from. They were always trying to make you feel as though you should be grateful to, for their attention to even be around them. Yeah. when they were just very abusive, they just basically feed on you, and then they give you a few trinkets, and then they would hold you to the trinket like you owe me because I gave you something.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, the reason they were doing this is because they needed her energy more than she ever needed theirs. That she vibrated stronger. When you vibrate stronger, people come around, and 9 times out of 10, if you have someone coming around trying to put you down or trying to, put you in, lower on the totem pole, the person trying to put you lower on the totem pole is the weakest. Whoops, there are time. Anyway, anyone want to say anything before we call it a session or forum?
I just want to say that I really am starting to look forward to these forums.
Oh, great.
Like it's so refreshing to be able to sit with like-minded consciousness and just be free and open, and there be fluidity versus resistance.
Oh, great. That's really great. It's good to hear.
I love hearing your stories.
Yeah.
Likewise.
A lot to share. And I know that there's still, some who are kind of quiet, but that's okay. You'll get comfortable and you'll start to, you start to think about these things, and you'll start to apply what you're hearing to your life, and then you'll have stories.
Yeah, and if anyone does their hand by their face, I'll see you and I'll make sure you get your time.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much
Take care.
for joining the
Thank
forum.
you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.